Minister Tharman, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, these past days have been filled with grim economic news and calls for resolute action to stem the crisis of confidence that's been threatening the global recovery. The committee that you chair, the IMF's Policy Steering Committee, has just wrapped up its meetings. Do you think it delivered what's needed to calm the markets?
Well, I think first we recognize the gravity of the situation, and that was itself very important, that around the table, my colleagues in the euro area, the US, the emerging markets, everyone recognized that this was now a situation which was not simply one of the isolated crisis in a few countries, but a global crisis, and complicated by the fact that it's not just a banking crisis but a sovereign crisis, and underpinned by weak economic growth. So it's an unusual confluence of factors. In fact, a confluence of more factors than was the case in 2008, because we now have a sovereign crisis in addition to weak economic growth and the banking crisis. So there was a very strong sense of collective resolve amongst everyone that we had to do what it takes. First, to resolve the crisis, the financial crisis, which is not about the medium to long term, it's here and now, and to take decisive steps to resolve the crisis. And second, to make sure that going forward beyond the short term, that we find a way of getting some growth back into the system and avoid the prospect of stagnation, which is a very real prospect in the advanced economies.
So what are the steps that are needed?
Well, the financial crisis, which has Europe as its epicenter, requires first and foremost and critically the adoption of the July 21st agreement of Euro area leaders in their respective parliaments and implementation. And getting that done as quickly as possible, implementation, is critical because the EFSF and the use of the EFSF in new and creative ways, which is what the July 21st agreement allows for, is extremely important in creating a firewall within Europe. Second, there was a sense from around the table amongst those who are not from the euro area that the IMF could play an important role going forward. It's already involved in helping to resolve the euro area crisis, but it could play a stronger role going forward. There was that sense, and we encouraged the IMF to do so.
Now on that, the IMF already has more than 50 programs with countries all over the world.
Right.
Would it have enough resources, do you think, if called upon to step in again?
It depends on the nature of its involvement. It still has a fair bit of resources left. It also has the NAB, which are not being rolled back, and if need be could provide additional resources. It's too early to be speculating about the amount of resources required and whether the IMF should step in with additional resources.
Now, of course, the epicenter of the crisis is in the advanced countries. And as you say, they need to do what they've set out to do, especially in Europe with the July 21st agreement. But the emerging markets and also developing countries have been a source of strength and stability. Can they do more to sort of help relaunch the recovery?
Well, that's part of the global rebalancing game. Overall, aggregate demand is coming down. Growth is going to be weaker than everyone expected. And new sources of growth are extremely important. And that means within the advanced economies that there has to be a lot more focus on reforms for the medium term. And I'm not just referring to fiscal consolidation, although that's a sine qua non. I'm referring to structural reforms. For instance, the whole model of taxation and what things you spend money on in a government budget has to change, so that even within an environment of fiscal consolidation, of tighter budgets, we find a way of crowding in private investment, find a way of supporting inclusive growth so that the poor and workers at large still have some basis for optimism in the future. And that requires a reorientation of our budgets. It's not just about overall fiscal balances, but the type of policies. What type of tax policies? Do you tax income or wealth? Do you spend on education and skills, or do you spend on entitlements? These are tough choices that each country has to make. And if we make those choices in a way that is honest and for the long term And if we tell people the truth about these choices, I think it will bring confidence back into our own countries as well as the international economy.
Minister Tharman, thank you so much.